Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Living Manna. Hi, guys. I'm Dave Sains, Senior Shepherd here at LMC. It's Wednesday night, which, of course, for us means it is Bible study time. I hope that you guys are having a great week out there. I know lots of crazy things are going on all around us with the inauguration coming up, everything going on in California, and everything going on all over the world. And yet, here we are. Here we are. Bible study time. Let's open up Abba's Word. Let's get some comfort and some instruction from him. Maybe get your mind off of all the things that are happening around us today and put our focus back on Father. All right, guys, before we jump into any of this for tonight, let me just go over just a couple of commercials like we normally do. That if this is the first time that you're hanging out with us, we would certainly appreciate it if you subscribe, hit the bell so you're notified each time that we go live. If you enjoy the message, if you get something out of it, please give us a thumbs up, share it with somebody. We would appreciate that. If you feel so led by Abba and you want to support us, you can do that through our LMC app. You can go right to the Google Play Store or your App Store. You can download the LM app and be part of all the stuff that we've got, all the stuff we do, our calendar, all the studies are on there, all of our notes, actually a lot of stuff you can get from YouTube, but even more stuff is on there. Our chat room is on there. Please download that. And if you feel so led to support us, there's a way you can do that through the LMC app. We don't get anything from YouTube. We're not monetized from YouTube or anything like that. So it's just from the gifts, the offerings, and the tithes from those that follow us here at LMC. And thank you, everybody, for your faithfulness. It is sincerely, sincerely appreciated. You allow us to do what it is that we do here. Okay, so with that out of the way, sort of commercials out of the way, got an interesting study for you. There's no way I'm going to get done with this today, so we're going to do a little bit of an introduction. So take at least maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3. We'll see how far we can go with it for tonight. But I wanted to talk about something a little bit different. So we're in between the fall feast days and the spring feast days coming up this upcoming April. Now we've been talking about the calendar. And, join us on Saturday. We're going to continue with that theme. We had, time for conversation downstairs in our fellowship after the service. So there's some stuff that we've been talking about that really wasn't broadcast. But we'll try to cover all of that at some point. And we still got some more discussion to do, some more teaching to do before we make some final decisions here. But we're learning about the calendar. We're learning about the Zadok, what the Zadok priests were, learning about the history. We're learning about what the story actually is. But that's on the weekend. But I thought what I'd do for Wednesday, since we're in between those feast days, we can deal with some topics, it's not feast day topics, but just other topics, because there's so much to talk about in Abba's Word. So this is just one of those topics I know we've probably all bumped into. I know I've mentioned this before. And so I thought it'd be a neat thing for us to perhaps pursue for tonight, maybe for the next couple of weeks, and try to get some answers so that we can better answer other people. So you know what I'm talking about. Here is the topic and the title for tonight. It's called "To the Jew First." To the Jew first. Now, this should be really familiar to you guys. We use this verse or a portion of this verse. We've heard this portion of the verse many, many times. And of course, this comes right out of the book of Romans by the Apostle Paul or Rav Shaul. And let me make this just a little bit bigger for you guys so you guys can see it. If you're watching us on Roku or some of the other platforms that we're on, and you're watching on your smart TV, it's nice and big now, so you can see all the words. Here's where the opening, where the title comes from, our opening verse. It comes out of the book of Romans, chapter 2, and verses 9 through 13. Listen, before we even do that, Abba, give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts that are willing to obey. Amen. Okay. Again, welcome everybody that's hanging out with us tonight. Verses 9 through 13. And it says the following: affliction and distress on every human being working what is evil, on the Jew first, the Yehudi, the Jew first, and also on the Greek or the Gentile. But esteem or glory, respect, and peace to everyone working what is good, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. For there is no partiality with Elohim. For as many as sinned without the Torah shall also perish without the Torah. And as many as sinned in the Torah shall be judged by the Torah. For not the hearers of the Torah are righteous in the sight of Elohim, but the doers of the Torah shall be declared right. Okay, great verses. Awesome, awesome verses. There's another portion of this where he says something similar to the Jew first, and then also to the Greek or to the Gentile. So what does it mean to the Jew first and then also to the Gentile? Well, this is actually part of a much, much bigger conversation, and something I know that Saul realized, he understood, he knew. We'll prove it as we go through some of this study. We'll talk about some of the things that he says with regards to this, as well as I believe the first century believers. They understood these concepts that we're going to talk about here tonight. But so what does it actually mean? What does it actually mean to the Jew first and also to the Gentile? Well, we've probably all bumped into this at one time or another. There are today groups within Judaism, different parts of Judaism, be it the Haredi or just conservative Judaism or liberal Judaism or Reform Judaism. They're called anti-missionaries. And these are people, these are rabbis, these are other people, believers from the religion of Judaism, that send out anti-missionaries or people to oppose the message of Messiah. Now we say message of Messiah, of course, they're thinking Jesus, right? Because that's normally what they're hearing about Jesus. And certainly, I understand the connection, but that's how, excuse me, that's how they're receiving him. Christianity is probably maybe a better way of saying it. And so they send out sort of counter missionaries to counter the message, predominantly for Jewish people, so that they feel that they're protecting Jewish people from the heresy of Christianity, the idea that there is a Messiah that has come, died, rose, and ascended to Father for the sins of the world. And so they send out these anti-missionaries. You can see on the picture there, you got the debate for Jews for Jesus versus the Jews for Judaism. And sometimes these things get really, really hot. And it can get pretty in your face. And one of the big guys, one of the well-known people in this is a gentleman named Rabbi Tovia Singer. I've listened to him before. Definitely a firebrand. He's trying to stick up for what it is that he understands that or he believes. And so we send out, so you've got Christendom or believers in Messiah that have sent out in the past missionaries, people to go out and share what they understand of the truth of Messiah. Well, they're doing the opposite. And again, I guess the basis of this is they feel they're trying to protect their people, that is, i.e. Judaism or Jews, from what they consider the heresy that Mashiach, that El sent a son, and the son died and rose again. To them, that is blasphemy. So on the one hand, and it's important that we understand this, there is a large portion of Judaism. That's not to say that all Jews are in opposition to Christians. It's not. But in opposition to Christianity, I would say yes. It is something that to them is the antithesis of what it is that they believe. And so that's one group. You've got the one group that is doing everything they can to sort of protect themselves from what they consider misinformation, which is obviously a big word today in our culture, misinformation or disinformation. All right, so that's the one side of it. But you sort of kind of realize where the one side of it comes from, because there's another side of it as well, and we'll deal with that in just a second. But one of the things that we've talked about before, we've mentioned before, is from this anti-missionary concept, and it's nothing that started now. This is something that started a long time ago. Comes the idea, one of the ideas. There's many of them, but here's the one I want to deal with for the next 2 weeks or so. Is the idea that the topic of Isaiah 53 is not talking about the Messiah. Of course, this should be something very, very familiar to us. Isaiah 53 should be, just right off the top of your head. That's the one who like a lamb is brought to the slaughter, right? So the idea is, and even amongst some Jewish sects, the idea is you can't even read Isaiah 53. It's skipped over very often. You're not supposed to read it, because when you do read it, of course, you can read that and certainly make the case, oh my goodness, this is talking about the Messiah, the Mashiach, who dies for the sins of the world, who is the one who by his stripes we are healed. And so in the counter-missionary or anti-missionary opposition to this, Isaiah 53 is explained in this way. And maybe you've bumped into this. I know we've talked about this before, at least in conversation with some people. The concept is that Isaiah 53, and it's not just Isaiah 53, it's multiple chapters, that it's not actually talking about one individual called the servant. It's not a Messiah chapter. It's not a messianic chapter or chapters. It's actually about Israel. It's about Israel as the servant of Abba, or the servant of Yah. And the one who started this, where this concept, this idea came up from, was a rabbi named Rashi, very, very famous rabbi. His actual name was Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, also known as Rashi. And he lived in the Middle Ages, from 1040 to 1105. He was a medieval Jewish commentator on the Bible and, of course, the Talmud. And he came up with this idea. Now, he also lived through the first Crusades. We'll talk about that in a second. But Rashi, his concepts, his ideas were, and you can see on the notes there, that according to Rashi, the suffering servant of Isaiah 53 and previous chapters and chapters after that, that the suffering servant of Isaiah 53 refers to the collective nation of Israel, not an individual Messiah. Meaning, he interpreted the passage as signifying the suffering of the Jewish people as a whole, rather than the prophesied Savior figure. This view, now this is important, this view, as Rashi came up with this view actually deviated from many other Jewish interpretations that did see, prior to Rashi, that did see Isaiah 53 as a messianic prophecy. The problem is he's living in a time when, of course, the Catholic Church is reigning supreme. And so there is that back and forth. And who's suffering under the weight of the Catholic Church? Well, the Jewish people are. Unfortunately, but they are. And while Rashi's views definitely gained traction in his day, many other prominent Jewish scholars, like Maimonides, disagreed with his interpretation, and he maintained the messianic understanding of Isaiah 53. Forward fast all the way to where we are today, and Rashi's views are still very prominent. The idea that Isaiah is not talking about a suffering servant, i.e. a Mashiach, a Messiah to come, but instead he's talking about the suffering of Israel, all that Israel would endure for the last 2,000 years or so. Now, this idea is born out of, as I said before, or just a moment ago, Rashi lived through the First Crusade. So he saw firsthand the brutality, the wickedness, the evilness of war and death and starvation and pestilence. He saw the wrath of Christianity and the wrath of Islam as they slaughtered each other in the First Crusade. Now, you can go into the whole history of why the Crusades happened, what Islam did, what Christianity did. The people who were in the middle of all of this were whatever Jews that were living in the land or in the midst of all of this, they suffered as well. And certainly the Jews suffered at the hands of Christianity for a long, long time. So you can almost understand in one sense why there would be this animosity, this off-putting of the idea of a Messiah, because the people that are telling you that this is the Messiah are the same people who are willing to kill you and run over you and treat you like, the lowest of the low on the planet, And certainly that doesn't do very well for evangelism, at least not in that day. And that's because the view of that day was as much in error as I'm presenting today, the view of Rashi, or the view of modern Judaism today, that puts forward the idea that it is not Messiah, but it is a suffering servant. It's about Israel. Well, the flip side of that coin is that modern Christendom put forward the opposite side. So for Rashi, as he looks at Isaiah 53, and here's just a little glimpse of it. We're going to go into it much deeper later on. From Rashi's perspective, as he's and modern Judaism's perspective today, as they're reading these verses, if they read these verses, as they're reading these verses, they're seeing the servant who's spoken of here as the house of Israel. Now, think about what this means. It says, "Who has believed our report? And to whom has the arm of Yah been revealed? For he grew up before him as a tender plant," meaning Israel grew up before him. They're saying, who has believed Israel? Who has listened to Israel? That is the nation of Israel. Nobody. He grew up before him, meaning before Father, as a tender plant, as a root out of dry ground. He, meaning the house of Israel, has no form or splendor that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should desire him. You look at the Jews, he's saying they looked at us, there was nothing about us that the nations, the people wanted. They, meaning the house of Israel, were despised and rejected by men. Now, from Rashi's perspective, I can see, from a medieval Jew, I could see why they would think that, because they absolutely were disrespected. They absolutely were rejected by Christendom. And I'll show you some reasons why in just a second. It was a horrific thing from Rome to Islam to Christianity. Judaism has suffered, or the Jews have suffered everywhere they've gone. They've been oppressed everywhere they've gone. So they were despised and rejected by men, a man of pains and knowing sickness. Now, again, this is talking about a single individual, but you're going to see there's some verses that talk about Israel as a single individual. So, I could see why they would make that connection, or why Rashi would make that connection. Truly, and we did not consider him. Verse 4, truly he has borne our sicknesses and carried our pains. Now think about what this is saying. This is saying that the house of Israel has borne the sicknesses and the pains of the world, of the nations who did not believe their report. This is putting the house of Israel in the place of a redeemer. This is putting forward the idea that if Israel is this servant, it is through Israel and their pain and their suffering that the nations who did not believe their report will somehow, someday, one day, believe their report. So it says, truly he has borne our sicknesses and carried our pains, yet we reckoned him smitten, stricken by Elohim, and afflicted. This is saying that Elohim struck them, or the way they're looking at it. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our crookedness. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. So if you put the nation of Israel, ancient and otherwise, the Israel that has been scattered for the last 2,000 years, this, from Rashi's perspective, Israel is the vehicle for redemption for the world, because it is through the sufferings of Israel and think about all the horrible things from the medieval ages to the Black Death to Roman persecution to the torture of from Catholicism to all they suffered in Russia, all they suffered in Germany, all they suffered all over Europe, all they suffered in the Islamic nations, all they suffered in Spain. All of that stuff, they're saying, was them receiving stripes to heal the nations. Now, that's a big statement that a whole nation could do this, but that's sort of the idea. I'm not saying obviously we believe this, but I want you to realize where this comes from and what's being thought of as these verses are read. All right, so that's Rashi, right? And those, now today that still follow this concept or this idea. Again, can I understand some of the sentiment? Absolutely. So while Israel, or Rashi on one hand, the Jew on one hand, is saying, well, this is about us, this is about Israel, this is about the Jews, Isaiah is about us, you then have, and I'm saying in error from the way he's putting it forward, there is also error on the other side, that what wound up happening from, second, third, fourth century on, is the Gentiles somehow got it in their mind that it has nothing to do with Israel anymore, and it's all about them. It's kind of like both groups just, sort of divided and said, no, it's about us, and the other group said, no, it's about us. And it really was because of the animosity in between. Both were in error. I know this is kind of inflammatory stuff that's on the screen, and I apologize for that, but this is real. This is stuff we've got to, because it's still here today. The hatred is still here today. Thankfully, and I would say I would have said a couple of years ago it's toned down, but it's right back up there. It's in the news. It's in the flags that are waving from the river to the sea. There's still the hatred. It's still there. There's still the animosity both ways. It's not just the world against them. It's them against the world as well. So there's this animosity on both sides. Here's just one quote. I could have given you, honestly, dozens and dozens and dozens of quotes from the church fathers all throughout history, all of the evil, horrible, nasty, terrible, disgusting things that they have said about Jews and Judaism. But I don't want to do that. I think actually years ago, I guess I went through that. I showed you some stuff. I just want to show you one quote. This is from Martin Luther, but this sort of depicts really the mindset of the church, because it became the idea that the church somehow was something different, and Father is done with them, and now we are the chosen people of God, at least the church. I don't say we, I don't mean us, I mean what they would have said. So here's just a quote from Martin Luther, just one quote, but it's a doozy. And there's like I said, there's dozens more. Remember, Martin Luther is the reformer, right? The one who starts protesting against Roman Catholicism, all the errors of Roman Catholicism, with his 90 thesis put up on the church doors in Germany. Of course, over time, this causes other people to protest, and out of this comes Protestants against the Catholic Church, and the beginning of denominationalism happens from Lutheranism to Calvinism and Baptist and Presbyterian, just so forth and so forth. And so all these different groups and denominations, as time goes on, as they begin to get the word in their hands and their languages, things change from what Roman Catholicism and the tight grip that they had on the entire world. But the person who started all this, or at least the person who is credited with starting all of this, is Martin Luther. And listen to what Martin Luther says about Jews. It says, "I had made up my mind to write no more either about the Jews or against them. But since I learned that these miserable and accursed people do not cease to lord to themselves even us, that is, the Christians, I have published this little book, so that I might be found among those who oppose such poisonous activities of the Jews, who warned the Christians to be on their guard against them. I would not have believed that a Christian could be duped by the Jews into taking their exile and wretchedness upon himself. However, the devil is the god of this world, and wherever God's word is absent, he has an easy task. Not with the weak, and not only with the weak, but also with the strong. May God help us. Amen." And that's one of the tamer things he says about the Jews, because he says some really, really, what we would consider crazy anti-Semitic stuff today. This comes out of the church. There was no love lost between Christian and Jew and Christian. They did not like each other. And so I can understand, sort of Rashi's reasoning, seeing what happens in the Crusades, what they did, just the slaughter and the mayhem that went on. He wants to separate himself. And Isaiah 53, certainly as you read it, you can't help but say, oh my goodness, that is Messiah. So yes, think of an alternative concept, an alternative idea. Again, the problem is, whether it be Maimonides or people prior to Rashi, they always realized, they always knew that this was a messianic chapter. But somehow, some way, as time has gone on, that's just not the way that it's looked at today. Of course, those pictures there, like I said, while they are vile and repulsive, this is history. We cannot ignore it. It's it was proposed to kill the Jews by Martin Luther, kill them in their synagogues, light their synagogues on fire with them in it, and that's what's being depicted there in the picture underneath it, to light their synagogues while the Jews are inside their synagogues to kill them. That's how crazy this was. So there's just animosity on both sides. Very, very, the dark ages. Well, here it is. This is as dark as it gets. And of course, what's in the middle of all of this? Isaiah 53. And what does it actually say? And what does it actually mean? And of course, as I said before, in quoting the Apostle Saul, he tells us in Romans that this message, this gospel, this good news is to the Jew first, but also to the Gentile. It doesn't say it used to be to the Jews and now it is to the Gentile. It doesn't say it is only for the Gentiles and not for the Jews. It's not to say it's for one and exclude the other. That's just not what he says. But so what does that mean? Believe it or not, and the answer for it is probably in a lot of different places, but we're going to find our answer for that in Isaiah. And not just Isaiah 53. We're going to look at quite a few chapters in Isaiah, but Isaiah 53. So here's Rashi's argument. I'm going to give you a couple of verses as to why he puts forward the proposal that the servant that's being spoken of throughout Isaiah is actually the house of Israel. Here's Isaiah chapter 41. Got my Hidden Manna cup. Hidden Manna, Friday night, guys, 7:30. Brother Max is finally feeling better. Got over the flu, really happy about that. His whole family was terribly, terribly sick. Looking forward to it. We'll be talking about judgment, as a matter of fact. Certainly with all the craziness that's going on around us, judgment is certainly something that needs to be on our mind. So join us on Friday night at 7:30 for Hidden Manna. Okay, so here's some of Rashi's arguments. Isaiah chapter 41, verses 8 through 9. Now, you can see as we read through this, Abba is talking about the house of Israel. So it says, but you, Israel, are my servant. Well, there it goes. Who's the servant? Israel's the servant. Yes. Amen. Absolutely. But there's more than one servant. And you have to, it's, you know, in real estate, it's location, location, location. Well, in the scripture, it's context, context, context. Yeah, you got to look at it in context. So here in Isaiah 41, it says, but you, Israel, are my servant, Yaakov, whom I have chosen, the descendants of Abraham who love me. So he's definitely talking about multiple people because it's descendants, right? It's plural. Even though the word servant is singular, it is referring to something plural. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm talking about here. Just, you know, little language here. He's saying my servant, which would certainly be singular, but he's talking about them as descendants. So multiple peoples, the whole nation, are in fact the servant of Abba, whom I have strengthened from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest parts and said to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you and I have not rejected you. So who did Father choose? He chose the house of Israel, which is why we get the term the chosen people, right? Well, he did. He did choose them. He did choose them, to the Jew first and also to the Gentile. Now, I know some would say, well, you know, by the time you get to the New Testament, it's really Judah or Judaism. It's not really Israel. That's semantics. That's semantics. Paul considered himself a Jew, but he also considered himself part of the house of Israel, an Israelite. So that's just semantics, the way we kind of split up things. Bottom line, they were considered the same peoples. I know, two different nations eventually, but the same peoples. So here's Isaiah saying, I have chosen you. So Rashi looks at this and he says, oh, well, look, the servant is Israel. So then you can, if it's that way in Isaiah 41, is it that way later on? Well, here's Isaiah 43, verse 10. Here, Father says again, you are my witnesses, declares Yahuwah, and my servant whom I have chosen, so that you know and believe me and understand that I am he. Before me there was no El formed, nor after me is there none. I am Yah, and beside me there is no Savior. So again, he's talking to the servant, to his witnesses, and his witnesses are his servant. So, all right, well, that's 2 points for Rashi, right? If we're keeping score here, all right, well, there's 2 verses. And I've even seen, some believers in Messiah, as they go through some of this stuff, look and say, well, maybe he is right. Maybe he is talking about Israel. No, the picture's much, much bigger than that. We need bigger eyes to see this thing. So here's chapter 44. I forgot what verse it is. I think it's probably the first verse. It says, but now hear, O Jacob, Yaakov, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. So here it is, 3 different times where he refers to them as the servant. And it is undoubtedly, he's referring to the whole house of Israel, many descendants, generations, as the servant. Do not argue with that whatsoever. So Rashi takes that and he then says, well, if in fact Israel is the servant from Isaiah 40, 41, 43, 44, then it only stands to reason that when he's talking about the servant in Isaiah 52, 53, 54, 55, that he is talking about Israel and not the Mashiach. Or in his case, what he's really saying, he's talking about Israel and he's not talking about Jesus, right? Because that's or Isa, I guess by the time, I guess it's Middle Ages. So yeah, it's still Isa. Jesus doesn't come along until 1600s or something like that. It's not the one that the Christians are worshiping. It's not him. It's not him. Yeshua, we would say, or Yahushua, we would say, it's not him. Right? So we're different from them. It's about us. It's not about them. They're saying, no, it's about us. It's not about you. You guys are wicked. No, you guys are wicked. No, we're going to kill you. We've got so just craziness. The dark ages go on. So I can at least, if this was the only evidence, I'd say, well, Rashi might have a point, except like I said, it's context. We have to have this in context. Here is, if we take his perspective. Now I want to read Isaiah 52. We're going to read through a good portion of it. Actually, I think we're going to read all of it, all the verses there. It's not very long. And I want to give it to you in what Rashi's perspective would be, but I also want to give it to you in what the thought was before Rashi, that this is also Messiah, Mashiach. The one we know as Yeshua. So here's Isaiah 52:1. So we're talking about from Isaiah chapter 40 all the way to 55 are the chapters about the servant. And it uses the word servant, but, is he always talking about Israel? Or does the context change? Does the context change as the storyline is going on? So here's Isaiah chapter 52, verse 1. It says, awake, awake, put on your strength, O Zion, put on your garments of splendor, O Jerusalem, the set-apart city. For no more do the uncircumcised and the unclean come into you. So Rashi's saying, listen, this whole story is about us. It's not about what these Christians are saying. And he's not wrong in that respect. This story is about Jerusalem. It's about what's going on in Jerusalem. It's about the redemption of Jerusalem, because it is to the Jew first. But Saul tells us, and also to the Gentile, not an exclusion of one another, and also. He says, O Jerusalem, the set-apart city, for no more do the uncircumcised and the unclean come into you. Shake yourself from the dust, arise and sit down, O Jerusalem. Loose yourself from the bonds of your neck. So Jerusalem's been captive. He's telling Jerusalem's been dirtied, it's been defiled. And Abba's coming to help and clean Jerusalem, to redeem Jerusalem. By Jerusalem, we mean the people of Israel, where the temple is, where the people of Yah are. Shake yourself from the dust, arise and sit down, O Jerusalem. Loose yourself from the bonds of your neck, O captive daughter of Zion. For thus says Yah, you have been sold for nothing, and you are redeemed not with silver. So this whole story of the servant is about the redemption of Jerusalem. We're going to see Jerusalem's going to have two different sides to it in a second, but this whole thing is about the redemption of the people in Jerusalem, about the house of Israel. And it is because it is to the Jew first and also to the Gentile. It says, you have been sold for naught, and you are redeemed not with silver, which is kind of interesting. For thus says the Master Yahuwah, at first my people went down into Mitzrayim to sojourn there. Now, I want you to stop right here for a second. I want you to stop right here. I want you to notice this. I put it in green, or whatever color it is, teal, whatever color it is. He's using an example here. You're not bought with silver. And at first my people went down into Egypt to sojourn there. Father always speaks to us in patterns, right? It's always a similar story over and over. And we've gone through this so many times, our spidey senses should be going off here. Wait a minute. Who was sold for silver and went down to Egypt? Immediately your mind should be going to like Joseph, right? Joseph, the whole story of Joseph, right? Absolutely. We should be thinking along those lines. But when else did Israel go down to Egypt? Well, after Joseph, the whole house of Israel went down to Egypt. We're talking about the Exodus. We're talking about the whole story of Moses, the whole story of Passover. And this is not by accident. This language does not appear here by accident. This is Father throwing out bones, spiritual bones for us to pick at, to see and say, oh, wait a minute, wait. He's using language that he wants us to understand. And it's not just here. We're going to find out this is from Isaiah 40 all the way to Isaiah 55. I'll tell you what that's all about in a second. But I want you to notice this. I want you to see the parallel here just for a second. It's just a couple of words. It's a glimpse out there. But I want your spidey senses to go off and say, wait a second. This sounds familiar. This sounds familiar. We've been here before. So it says, at first my people went down to Mitzrayim to sojourn there, and Asher oppressed them without cause. And now, what have I here, declares Yahweh, that my people are taken away for nothing. Those who rule over them make them wail, declares Yahweh. And my name is despised all day continually. Therefore, my people shall know my name in that day, for I am the one who is speaking. Hold on a second. Wait. Did you see what was just said here? Therefore, my people shall know my name in that day, for I am the one who is speaking. This is the first Exodus story. This is language of the Exodus story. This is Moses at the burning bush. And he says, well, how are these people going to know who you are? What do I call you? What's your name? And he tells them, this is my name, Yod-He, Wav-He, Yahuwah. Tell them Yahuwah sent you, or Yahuwah sent you. This is same language, guys. This is the same language of the Exodus, same language of the story of Moses, and it's not by accident. So whatever jam Jerusalem and the house of Israel is in, whatever jam the servant is in, it is similar to, we're getting the same language as we would have gotten in the story of the Exodus. It says, how pleasant upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news. Now, we should be familiar with this. This comes right out of the book of Romans, chapter 10, right? How beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. He's quoting this chapter. Saul is quoting this chapter that is laden with language of the Exodus, telling us that Yahuwah is going to make his name known to his people. He's going to speak his name to his people, and he's going to redeem Jerusalem. He's going to redeem the people of Zion. He's going to redeem the house of Israel. And that's good news. This is the good news, that Yahuwah is returning to Zion. Just like the good news would have been as Moses brings it to the house of Israel in Egypt, that Yahuwah is returning to the house of Israel, to Jacob, to take them out of Egypt. That's the parallel that's going on here. Who proclaims peace, who brings good news, who proclaims deliverance. Now I'm putting the PDP, yellow is PDP, it's just me making a commentary. Who proclaims deliverance or salvation to the Jew first, but also to the Gentile. Who says to Zion, your Elohim reigns. So you're reading this as a Jew in the days of Rashi or any other era, and you're saying, well, this is about us. This is about Zion. This is about Jerusalem, and it is first, but it's not only about that. And we'll see that in just a second. All right, let me get these out of here. Let's go to the next slide. I'm running out of time. So he says, the voice of your watchmen, they shall lift up their voices together and shout for joy. Because eye to eye, they see the return of Yahuwah to Zion. That's the good news. That's what he just said. How beautiful the feet of those who preach good news. Telling them that Yah has returned to Jerusalem. He's returned to Israel, just like he returned with Moses. Yah returned. That's the good news. And beautiful are the feet of those who preach that good news. He says, break forth into joy, sing together, you waste places of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem's been laid waste. Jerusalem's not in a good situation. Israel's not in a good situation. For Yahuwah shall comfort his people. Who are his people? Israel, the servant that we've already mentioned a couple of other times, that Rashi's right. The servant is the house of Israel, but not always. It's not the only time the servant is used in context. He shall redeem Jerusalem. What is Yah going to do to Jerusalem? He is going to redeem Jerusalem, meaning the people of Jerusalem are going to be redeemed. The house of Israel, his servants, are going to be redeemed. Yahuwah shall lay bare his set-apart arm in the eyes of all the nations. What Father's going to do in saving Jerusalem, all the nations shall see. And all the ends of the earth, so it's to the Jew first, because it's coming to Zion, it's coming to Jerusalem, it's coming to Jacob, it's coming to the servant. Father's going to make his name known to them first. And all the ends of the earth, and also to the Gentiles, shall see the deliverance of our Elohim. To Israel, to the Jew, turn aside. What's the deliverance for? Our Elohim. Whose Elohim? Israel's Elohim. But the whole world's going to see it and benefit from it. Turn aside, turn aside. Come out from there, meaning the temple, meaning the thing that has fallen apart, the Jerusalem that has fallen apart, the Jerusalem that is in slavery. This is not about the slavery of Egypt. This is another story similar to the slavery of Egypt. He says, come out from there. This is right out of Revelation 18. Same language, right out of Revelation 18. Come out from there. Come out from the temple. Come out from Jerusalem. He's talking to the Jew. Stop the Babylonian stuff. Come out. Touch not the unclean. Come out of her midst. He's talking about the harlot of what we call Revelation 18. Jerusalem. He's talking about Judaism. He's talking about the stuff that they were doing. Come out from her, the harlot. Be clean, you who bear the vessels of Yahuwah. For you shall not come out in haste, nor go in flight. Wait a second. That's Exodus language, right? You put your coat on and wrap yourself up because we're going to leave in haste. He's saying, no, you're not going to leave in haste. You shall not come out in haste, nor go in flight, but for Yahuwah is going before you, and the Elohim of Israel is your rear guard. That's Exodus language. And we'll look at some of those verses next week, but I'm just going to let you know that's Exodus language. Abba was their rear guard. They followed him, but he was their rear guard. Verse 13. So what's Abba going to do? How's he going to bring them out from the harlot? How's he going to get them out and show his arm? How's he going to make this known to the nations? How's he going to go to the Jew first and also to the Gentile? Verse 13. See, my servant shall work wisely. Wait a minute. If he's saving the servant we've already established, that Rashi established is the house of Israel, who's this servant? This servant, my servant, shall work wisely. He shall be exalted and lifted up and very high. Now this is, it's sort of weird the way we read this in the scriptures version. We're used to reading this like in King James, RSV, ESV. We hear this as the one who is high and exalted. Beloved, there's only one who this language applies to. Elohim, who is the high and exalted one. Isaiah is saying this servant shall be high and exalted and lifted up and very high. Elohim, the son of Elohim. That's how we would know it. But that language, even in Hebrew, that language is expressly used for Elohim, not for the house of Israel, for Elohim. As many as were astonished at you, meaning the servant who is high and lifted up, so the disfigurement beyond any man and his form beyond the sons of men. Something's going to happen to this one who's high and lifted up that is not going to be good. True enough, Israel does suffer, but the suffering of Israel doesn't produce salvation for the nations. This servant who's high and lifted up is a different story. He shall likewise startle many nations. This servant does. Sovereigns, kings shall shut their mouths at him. For what had not been recounted to them, they shall see. And what they had not heard, they shall understand. So from Rashi's perspective, he's thinking, well, this is us. This is the Jewish people and all the suffering we've gone through. And the nations are going to see how horrible and terrible they've been to us, all the anti-Semitism and things they've done to us and the killing and the pogroms and the Holocaust and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, they're going to see things in us that they did not understand before. And somehow they're going to be delivered. That's if you look at Isaiah 53 as the servant Israel. That's not what this is saying. This servant is high and lifted up, and this servant is going to startle many nations. This servant is going to show them the nations, what they have not heard before. Question: what did the nations, all nations, including you at one point, what did we never hear before? What did we not know that the house of Israel did know already, did hear already? What is going to be told us by this servant that we did not know? We can say, oh, that he's Messiah, that he's the son. All right, fine. But that's not what he's referring to. All the language here is the language of Exodus. Check this out, guys. The nations, what they did not know, what no nations knew of prior to the time of the coming of Messiah, none of us, even after the time of Messiah, we didn't know the story of the Exodus. The story of the Exodus meant nothing to us. Nations do not know the story of the Exodus, which, to put it really concisely, what the nations did not know is the story of the Passover, the story of the Exodus, and the story of the servant Moses. We did not know that. None of us knew that. None of us knew that. Deuteronomy 18, verse 13. Be perfect. So Israel was told this was coming, no matter what. Way before Isaiah writes, Israel was told this was coming. Moses writes, or Father says to Moses, be perfect before Yah, your Elohim, for these nations whom you are possessing do listen to those using magic and to diviners. They don't know the story of Exodus. The nations around you don't know. So, but as for you, Yahuwah Elohim had not appointed such for you. You know the story of Exodus. You're not supposed to do witchcraft and magic and all the rest of that. Yahuwah your Elohim shall raise up for you a prophet like me, like Moses from your midst and from your brothers. Listen to him like you listened to Moses, according to all you asked of Yah, your Elohim, in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yah, my Elohim, nor let me see this great fire anymore. They didn't want to hear the actual voice of Father, so they wanted a man to represent the voice. Well, that's what Abba's going to give them. He gave it to them in Moses. He's going to give it to them in a prophet like Moses, lest I die. And Yah said to me, what they have spoken is good. I shall raise up for them a prophet like you out of the midst of their brothers. He's going to come from them. And I shall put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. And it shall be, the man who does not listen to my words, which he speaks in my name, I will require it of him. You're going to die if you don't. This is the beginning of the story, in the story of the Exodus, of the story of Passover, of the story of Moses, is promising us what? Another Moses who will speak the word of Elohim. So who is Moses? We could probably look at 50 different scriptures. Is Israel the servant of Yah? Undoubtedly they are. They are spoken of that many, 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 many times as a pluralistic group of people. But who is the servant who speaks the word? Joshua 1:1. And it came to pass after the death of Moses, the servant of Yah, that Yah spoke to Yehoshua, the son of Nun, the assistant of Moshe, saying, and it goes on and on and on, I'm skipping to verse 7, only be strong and very courageous, and guard to do according to all the Torah which Moses, my servant, commanded you. What is the servant coming that's like Moses? He's going to do the same thing Moses do, speak the instruction, and we must do it. And do not turn to the right or to the left, so that you act wisely wherever you go. So who's the servant out of the Exodus, out of the Passover? Moses is the servant. We're told this expressly in Deuteronomy 18. Isaiah is retelling us the story. That's what this whole chapter 40 to 55 is all about, including chapter 53. Here is Isaiah chapter 42. I got just a couple of minutes left. Isaiah chapter 42. Now listen to this. Now we're going to go from Isaiah 40 all the way to 55, but listen to chapter 42. So if Moses is the servant, and it's a single individual who speaks Yah's word, there is the servant Israel, who is the one that's part of Jerusalem to be redeemed, not the one who redeems the nations, the one who is to be redeemed, who's to come out of the harlot, who's to come out of that temple system. Here is the servant like Moses. And this goes right back to the language of Deuteronomy. See my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen one, PDP version, like Moses, my being has delighted in. I have put my spirit upon him. We'll connect this to some New Testament verses next week. He brings forth right ruling to the nations. Moses brought forth right ruling to the house of Israel. The new Moses that's coming will bring right ruling to the nations, to the Jew first and also to the Gentile. He does not cry out, nor lift up his voice, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. A crushed reed he does not break, and a smoking flax he does not quench. He brings forth right ruling in accordance with truth. He does not become weak or crushed until he establishes right ruling, the Torah, in the earth. And the coastlands wait for his Torah. This is to the nations. Moses was to the nation. This one's to the nations, but to the Jew first and also to the Gentile. Thus says El, Yah, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread forth the earth, that which comes from it, who gives breath to the people on it and spirit to those who walk on it. I, Yahweh, have called you in righteousness, the servant, and I strengthen your hand and guard you and give you the servant for a covenant. This servant is going to be a covenant to who? To the nations, to the Jew first, but also to the Gentile, to open blind eyes, to bring out prisoners from the prison, those who sit in darkness from the prison house. I am Yahuwah, that is my name, and my glory I do not give to another. This wonderful story is nobody else's idea but Father's. He thought this up. The Messiah works it with them, but he thought this up, and he's not going to give this glory. There's no other way to get this except through this story. My glory will not give another, nor my praise to idols. Look, guys, look. Here it is. You got to notice this. You got to see this. This is so important. This is Exodus talk. This is the other Moses talk. See, the former predictions have come. What former predictions? The first Moses already came. The first Passover already came. And the first Exodus already came. That's the former things. And new ones. A new what? A new Moses. A new Passover. A new Exodus. Not out of slavery to Egypt, but out of slavery to sin. Not for a nation, for the nations. But the story came to the Jew first, and now also to the Gentile. Same patterns. This is what Isaiah is about. It's the same patterns. He says, the former predictions have come, and new ones I am declaring. Before they spring forth, he's telling us the Exodus is going to happen again. There's another Exodus. There's another Passover. There's another Moses. There's another Exodus coming. This is Isaiah telling us this. Will spring forth. I let you hear them. He told us beforehand what was coming. To me, that is just absolutely mind-boggling. That's the context that as we read from chapter 40 all the way to 55, there's two servants. There's the servant that are the descendants of Abraham, from which this servant will come. But this servant is like Moses. Actually, we're going to find out as we look at some scriptures later on or next week when we connect all this stuff with some New Testament scriptures. He's obviously greater than Moses. But the story, the pattern is the same. This is the context. Without this context, you're never going to understand Isaiah 53. Our Hebrew brethren will never understand Isaiah 53. And while they may follow Rashi now, again, Maimonides and others knew this. They knew this, that it's called in Hebrew commentaries from chapter 40, 55, is called the second Exodus. They know this. Now we just got to pray their eyes open up and they can see who Mashiach is. Anyway, that's what I got for tonight. Just a little bit of introduction. I hope I whet your appetite to get into this a little bit deeper, to see this a little bit differently. I know it's a story we've heard before, but now we're hearing it in a totally different book, in a totally different way. And we're going to put all the pieces together, and we're going to do all the connections between the Exodus and the stuff Isaiah says. It's just mind-boggling as we go through it. Something fun to do in between the feast seasons. We're in that time between that, the time of winter. It's cold, it's dark outside. Let's go do some fun stuff mentally, spiritually, and talk about some other things, get some other angles in there. So that's what we're doing right now. Beloved, this story is to the Jew first and also to the Gentile. Not just to the Jew, excluding the Gentile, and not just to the Gentile, excluding the Jew. Both of those ideas are wrong. And yet those are the ideas that we've held, I can't tell you, for how long, and we've been killing each other over it, well, for just as long. All right. Well, that is Abba's word for you guys for tonight. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. I did. That was fun. I enjoyed that. To the Jew first and also to the Gentile. Guys, don't forget to join us tomorrow morning for our Hidden Manna bright and early. And of course, for Morning Manna bright and early. And our Hidden Manna this upcoming, here it is, our Hidden Manna this upcoming Friday night at 7:30. Brother Max and I, we're talking about judgment. This kind of an interesting topic. Please keep our whole world in prayer. Lots of crazy stuff going on. Still those fires going on in California. Pray for our whole world. We need it, especially with the inauguration coming up this Monday. Again, don't forget to join us on Saturday as well for our our Shabbat service. We look forward to meeting you there, to worshiping with you. Again, if you haven't, if you're blessed by this, you can support us. Go to the LMC app. You can download it. Be in touch with all the things that we do. We appreciate all of your support in that way. In the meantime, guys, have a great night out there. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Shalom.